Just to introduce myself, I'm Stetcyn Maldonado. I'm the manager for the Seeds for Bees program, and I want to thank everybody for coming. Today, we're going to be talking about why bee health matters to your bottom line, specifically on the farm. Let's see. All right. So here's a roadmap for the talk. We're going to be discussing a little bit about Project APISM, who we are. We're going to be discussing the losses for this year, the 2024-25 colony loss season. We'll be discussing threats to honeybees, why nutrition is important, why cover crops, and then we will be finishing up with the Seeds for Bees program. So I'd like to start off with introducing Dr. Marta Guarna. She's going to be presenting along with me. So Dr. Marta Guarna is our research program director. She's also an adjunct professor at the University of British Columbia. She has authored over 50 scientific and outreach publications, and previously researched at the Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, focusing on honeybee health, crop pollination, and environmental monitoring. So I'll pass it over to you, Marta, to talk about Project APISM and bees.
Thank you, Stetcyn, for this nice introduction. Let's talk about our organization, Project APISM. It was founded by beekeepers and growers back in 2006. Our mission is to drive and support science to deliver innovations for healthy bees. We have three focus areas. The first one is research, and we actually have funded almost 200 projects on applied research. The second one is resources. We make available informative guides and instructional videos. The third one is more relevant to today, stock, is forage. We support programs to introduce floral resources to bees, and one of these programs is the Seeds for Bees program. It promotes and facilitates the planting of cover crops, and we will explain today why planting cover crops is so important, not only for bees, but also for growers and for crop production. Next slide, please. Project APISM is a nonprofit organization at the intersection of science, honeybees, and agriculture. We aim to address the complex factors that affect bee health and colony survival. And how do we do this? We provide funding for research and education and provide industry solutions like the Seeds for Bees program. We work with beekeepers, researchers, business associations, and farmers and individuals just like yourself. Next slide, please. And why we care so much about healthy bees. We all associate bees with honey, and honey production itself contributes to nearly 350 million to US agriculture production value. However, honeybees are also responsible for pollinating a variety of crops, and these pollination services in the US contribute to 18 billion in agricultural revenue. Honeybees play a crucial role in sustaining a reliable and nutritious food supply. Almond pollination alone requires over 2 million colonies. Next slide, please. Thank you. To meet this pollination demand, beekeepers move a large number of colonies, and in February, this happens even from outer state to California for almond pollination. And after almond pollination, they may be transported again to pollinate other crops. The map that you see illustrates some of the migratory journeys that honeybee colonies where honeybee colonies go. Next slide, please. This year, as beekeepers were getting ready to move their colonies to pollinate almonds, they realized that some of their colonies were weak or non-viable. So they reached out And we at Project APSM started a survey to determine the extent of these colony losses. We had a very strong response with over 800 beekeepers responding. This slide shows the data with the losses from the period of June 2024 to February 2025, where we did the survey, or started the survey. So if we focus on the commercial beekeepers, which are defined here as beekeepers with more than 500 hives in their operations, we received 280 responses from them. And they reported an average colony loss of 62%. And we estimate that the number of colony losses are over 1 million. This very high level of colony loss means challenges to meet pollination demand and also increased cost for beekeepers as they recover and rebuild. They also may suffer financial losses from reduced income from pollination, but also from lower production of honey and other hive products. This level of colony losses of 62% is very high. However, the industry has had colony losses from some time. Next slide, please. The graph in this slide shows data from several years. The survey was initially administered by Bee Informed Partnership and is now managed by Jeff Williams' group at Auburn University in collaboration with the Apiary Inspectors of America and others. In the graph, you can see how the percentage of colony losses, which is what is represented in the y-axis, has been changing through years. The yellow line shows the losses during summer, the blue line, the losses in winter, and the red line shows the overall annual losses. You may see that the overall line on losses last year reached 55%, which is also high. Next slide, please. The question then is, what is causing these losses? Although we don't know yet whether this year in 2025 there were any particular stressors that had a more profound effect, what we do know is that honeybees have a variety of interacting threats or stressors that affect honeybee health. These are the 4 Ps: parasites, pathogens, poor nutrition, and pesticides. Of the parasites, the varroa mite is the more damaging one. Not only directly affects the bees, but it also transmits a variety of viruses that can be lethal. Viruses and bacteria are the examples of pathogens that affect bees. Another challenge of honeybees is poor nutrition, as bees need nectar and pollen from a variety of sources for their nutritional health. Honeybees can also be exposed to pesticides, and this sometimes it's challenging to determine what is the most important factor of these 4 Ps, because all of these factors interact with each other. For example, if a bee has a nutritional deficiency, it is much more likely to be affected by pathogens or pesticides. This is one of the reasons why it's very important to ensure proper nutrition, and the Seeds for Bees program can help. At Project APSM, we are addressing all of these complex factors that affect honeybee health with research and implementation of practical solutions. If you'd like to help us, if you'd like to support this effort, I invite you to donate to PAM. We will provide you later with a link that is specific for Seeds for Bees program. But the link that you see in this slide and that Tessa, our communication manager, is putting in the chat is to support all of PAM's programs. Next slide, please. So what is a bee diet? Bees need nectar and pollen. Pollen is a vital source of protein, lipids, and micronutrients. Pollen from different sources has different nutrients and protein contents, but also different amino acid composition and different micronutrient composition. And having, therefore, a diverse protein source and pollen source is very important for healthy bees. Nectar is the main source of carbohydrates for bees. Nectar is processed with enzymatic processes and then a dehydration process to form honey. And this honey provides the carbohydrates that bees need not only to move and function, but also it gives the reserves that they need to survive during the colder periods in the winter. The photo you see is of a frame of a colony with good reserves. The yellowish material that you see in each cell is pollen that is stored in the form of bee bread. You may observe that there are some darker and some orange color and others yellowish. The different colors mean that this pollen comes from different sources. Although there are substitutes for pollen and nectar, the best source of nutrients for honeybees are natural pollen and nectar from plants and flowers. And I will pass the microphone to Stetson, who will talk about cover crops and how those can help with bee nutrition and the benefits of cover crops to honeybees, but also to growers, to you and the farm. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. Yeah, I totally forgot to mention that if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. And then as we come up to links, Tessa will be placing those links in the chat. And there will also be a QR code on the slide itself. Um, I'm going to be discussing cover crops first from the bees' point of view, and then I'm going to be switching over to the farmer. So this is why cover crops are important to bees. Cover crops provide a synergistic effect, which can boost bee productivity on the farm. I'm going to start off with the feedback loop. So especially in California, when bees are being brought into the state for almond pollination, they're starting to come out of hibernation. And bees are going to be focusing on looking for when it's spring. They're not going to start, they don't automatically know when it's spring and when it's not. So there's going to be some forager bees, and as those are going out and exploring, they're going to find some forage. And as they bring that pollen in, that's the signal that tells the hive that we are starting for the year. And so as that pollen starts getting stored in the hive, the queen bee is going to start laying her eggs. And as there are more eggs, the worker bees are going to see that there's more children to feed. There's going to be an increasing need soon, so there will be more forager bees. A lot of farmers a lot of beekeepers kickstart this process by feeding bees. But the best source would be having natural forage out there, and a lot of the cover crops that we have available in the program are designed to bloom before almonds do if they're planted at the right time frame. And so they serve as that signal to get bees started. And the reason that's really important for farmers, especially almond farmers, is because you're having a cover crop get those bees going before you need it for your almonds. And for a lot of almond cultivars, they're only going to be blooming for a week. So you don't want the bees to be waking up and starting to work when you need them to be at full force. Cover crops also anchor bees onto the farm. And by anchoring, I mean it keeps them located where they are. So almonds are an incredible source of forage for bees, but bees don't know if that forage is going to be there tomorrow or the next day. So they're always looking for a backup. They're looking for security, because if they don't have that security, they don't know that they might die or starve in the next couple of days. So by having a diverse cover crop or having forage that's in additional to what you have for your crop, they're more likely to stay on the farm. They're not going to go as far looking for something different. And then bees naturally want diversity in their diet. They're a lot like us. If we went to Taco Bell every single day, you're going to start considering driving a lot farther to find something different. They can also improve pollination. So there was a study by the Almond Board of California that was showing that cover crops can increase the efficacy of honeybee pollination. So we're not saying that cover crops are going to boost your yield overall, but they make pollination more effective And the theory is that they presented in this paper was because you're bringing in native and wild pollinators onto your farm. And by having another pollinator taking up that flower, taking up that space, it encourages the bees to go back and forth across your rows, which is really important for the um, non-self-pollinated varieties like nonpareil. You need to get that nut pollinated, you have to have that bee cross your row into another cultivar and then come back. So that crossover is really important. And then we're also providing forage when we need it most. If a lot of you can imagine, California does not have a lot of flowers in January or early February. And often almonds are usually one of the first ones blooming. There's a few flowers here and there, but these cover crops are really vital because otherwise the bees are looking at nothing until almond bloom. So this is the Seeds for Bees program. This is a little bit of the basics about why we exist. So first and foremost, we're here to feed honeybees and other pollinators. We increase the diversity, density, and duration of nutritious forage, which means that there's more forage, it's lasting longer, and it's all in one place, so it makes it really easy for pollinators to get to. But we also have a lot of on-farm benefits. So we feed the soil, all of our cover crop mixes are designed for bees, but each one has a specialty that they can focus on for the farm, such as breaking up compaction and fixing nitrogen, and I'll get more into that later. Uh, and then we're also here to educate and assist. So you can't fix a problem if you don't know that it exists in the first place. And then you can't use a solution that you're not aware of. So that's why we're here. We're here to provide education. And we're also here to assist. It's a really big ask to go to a farmer and be like, hey, I want you to try this new thing on your farm, this farm that you're depending on to feed you and your family, and just trust me. Um, so here we're able to provide free or subsidized cover crop seed and a lot of assistance in how to manage that, which is really helpful. This is how the Seeds for Bees program works. So it's a multi-year program. So there's 3 requirements in order to participate. You first have to be located in California, and that's because we're trying to reach as many bees as we can with the funding provided, and around 80 to 90% of the nation's bees are brought to the state first thing in the year. So it's the biggest bang for our buck. And then you have to be able to plant 4 or more acres of cover crop, and a lot of that is just due to shipping and packaging. And then the last is you need to be or represent a commercial farmer or beekeeper. In this case, when we say commercial, we're meaning someone who's making money off of their operation. So if they're a beekeeper, they're making money off of their honey or pollination. If they're a farmer, they're making money off of farm produce. There are for participant awards, first year participants receive up to $2,500 in free seed, and second year participants receive up to $1,500 in free seed. You do have to reapply every time for each year. And then for returning participants, so these are people working on their 3rd year or more, they can purchase discounted seed through the program. And if you're purchasing a seed as a returning participant, you can design your own mixes as well. So you're not limited to what we have. So there are 4 common components of cover crops. These are kind of like the backbones of what most people make their cover crops out of. Those are brassica, these are family groups. So there's brassicas, legumes, broadleaves or forbs, and the grasses. Um, so brassicas are a popular choice for cover crops because they're very durable, they grow really well, but they also offer a lot of additional benefits, such as breaking up soil compaction. They establish really quickly, so they help suppress weeds. And then one thing that people really enjoy about these brassicas is as you terminate that cover crop, the biomass will start to break down and release a compound that's toxic to nematodes and some small weed seeds. But most of the research has been into nematodes. As far as legumes, people really want those because they're a nitrogen fixer. They're the only family that can fix nitrogen. Oh, they're the only family that has a symbiotic relationship with microbes and can fix nitrogen within the plant themselves. The broadleaves and forbs is kind of like a catch-all for everybody else. So anything that's not a grass is a broadleaf or a forb. And these are used to diversify the cover crop and to add a unique benefit. Um, a good example would be purslane. Some people like to I always get 'em mixed up, plantain. Um, so if you're grazing sheep or something, some people will include plantain because it has, a negative effect on intestinal parasites. So that would be like a specialty, like a unique inclusion. And then the last one are grasses. Grasses offer a number of benefits, and we include them in our own cover crop mixes, even though they're not really there for pollinators. They're great at reducing erosion. They can help fill in the gaps in your cover crop. So if you imagine if you have a lot of large leaves stacked on top of each other, there's going to be gaps. And wherever sun reaches the soil, you're going to start getting weeds coming up. So the grass kind of helps fill in those gaps, and they can also add a structural component to your cover crop. Here are seed mix offerings for 2025. On the left-hand side of your screen, those four are our cover crop mixes. So these are the ones that are designed to be planted on the farm and to be terminated in the spring. So later I'll be discussing our two most popular mixes, which would be the pollinator brassica and the nitro builder. On the right, we have the pollinator wildflower and purple sun. These are our bee yard mixes. These aren't meant to be planted on the farm and to be terminated because they're meant to provide forage for as long as possible. So a lot of these can bloom up into August, if not later, depending on how much water they have access to. So we don't provide these as cover crops just because they would be getting mowed, and that would defeat the purpose of those blends. Pollinator brassica has been our long-standing favorite. It's great for breaking up soil compaction and it's really easy to use. If you're new to cover crops, I would suggest this one. It's easy to plant, easy to manage, it's drought tolerant, it establishes really quickly. This one is composed of three different kinds of mustard, a canola, and daikon radish. The seeding rate is on the lower side when it comes to cover crops, which is 8 to 12 pounds per acre. And a lot of that is because the seeds are so small that you're getting more plants per pound of seed. The average height is about 3 to 7 feet, and that depends on a number of factors such as sunlight, water, planting date. I'd say typically it's around 4 to 5 feet, but it can get pretty tall. Also, likewise, it can be really short depending on the situation. People like using this one because it's a hardy, drought-tolerant mix. Its main focus is for breaking up compacted soils and suppressing weeds. It's also gonna be our earliest flowering mix, and if it's planted around early to mid-October, you're guaranteeing that it's gonna bloom before your almonds do. And then this one also releases that compound that's toxic to nematodes after it's been terminated. So it's not going to fully remove your nematode issue, but it'll start bringing that population down. So it's a way to synergize your nematode control. The most popular one last year was the Nitro Builder. People like this one for its nitrogen fixing capabilities and for erosion reduction. So this one has common vetch, triticale, and daikon radish. It's planted at a slightly higher seeding rate, and that's because a lot of those seeds are a little bit larger, um, which is 25 to 35 pounds per acre. And it's a little bit shorter than the pollinator brassica, sticking closer to 3 to 5 feet, though that daikon radish can get pretty tall. Um, this one is great for its weed suppression, erosion reduction, and the nitrogen fixing capabilities. So that triticale, which is a wheat rye hybrid, has a really deep fibrous network of roots, so it can really net your soil together compared to the pollinator brassica, which has a lot of thick tap roots. Common vetch is the nitrogen fixer in this mix, and it can fix up to 100 pounds of nitrogen per acre, but keep in mind that's going to depend largely on its growth. So most of that nitrogen is going to be in the upper portion of the plant, and the more biomass of that plant, the more growth you have, the more nitrogen you're going to get. So if you have a small plant, you're going to have less nitrogen. If you have a big plant, you're going to have more nitrogen. Typically, when it comes to legumes, 4% of the dry matter is gonna be nitrogen. So if you can imagine that plant itself, the more weight you have, the more nitrogen you're gonna get. So we also have a number of additional programs in addition to Seeds for Bees. So this is the farmer to farmer collaboration. It's an RCPP that we got in conjunction with Pollinator Partnership and a number of other organizations. So this one differs from Seeds for Bees in that they offer a lot of additional benefits, including in addition to cover crops. So the cover crops is going to be something that's going to come from Seeds for Bees. But these other offerings are also benefits of the program. It is county-based, so if you're in any of the counties listed to the side, you can apply for this program. If you scan the QR code, it'll take you to their application page, and I believe Tessa will be putting in a link to that application as well. And then I really want to say a big thank you to our donors. Seeds for Bees is entirely funded by the generous donations of individuals and corporations. So without these donors, Seeds for Bees wouldn't exist. We don't get government funding. Now, I do say that with the stipulation that Seeds for Bees does work with other nonprofits and other companies. For example, the Farmer to Farmer collaboration does get some federal funding. We also have another program through Blue Diamond, which is currently on hold, but it's also a government-funded version of Seeds for Bees, specifically for Blue Diamond farmers. However, if you're in Seeds for Bees itself, that's entirely funded by donations. And the reason why that's important is because you can sign up for Seeds for Bees and it's not going to affect your ability to have a federal or a state grant. Since there is no government money, it can stack with anything. But we are hugely grateful to these people for making this program possible. And if you're interested in donating, you could scan the QR code. And here's our last slide. If you're interested in applying to Seeds for Bees, you could scan the QR code. Tessa will also be placing that link into the chat. Our application is open from April 1st to August 31st, but I'd highly suggest signing up early if you're interested in the program. Every year we get more popular, and actually last year was the first year that we closed early because we ran out of seed. So I can't stress enough that if you want to get your seed, sign up early. We will now be transitioning to questions. So Tom Johnson, he's our Climate Smart Habitat Manager, will be reading out those questions from the chat. And if you have anything for me or Marta, you can ask those now.
Well, so far we've had two questions. One was from Violet, asked about, will Seeds for Bees program ever expand funding outside of California? That one I did not know.
Yeah, I can answer that one. So I would love to get Seeds for Bees into every state in the United States. There is a goal or a hope to expand, however, that's going to be largely tied to funding. So as we get more funding, we'll be able to include more states.
And the second question we had was from Tony, and she asked about the 4 acres spread out in 1 acre borders or thereabouts, and does the cover crop need to be planted in the alleys? And I replied to her, I mean, we would discuss that during your application process. Bee pastures is what she's basically proposing, and that's a viable use of this seed. We are to support bees.
Yeah, something like that would be like one of our bee yard mixes. So it doesn't have to be a solid block of 4 acres. It could be the borders around your farm. It just has to, for cover crops, it has to add up to 4 acres. We do have a stipulation for the bee yard mixes, which are more specific to beekeepers, but that's up to 2 acres. And then while we wait for more questions, I will get a little bit more into the details about the application process. So when you sign up for Seeds for Bees, it's about a 5 to 10 minute application. You don't need to add any additional paperwork. We're mostly looking for info as to how to get you that seed. After you fill out that application, I will send you a text, or Tom or I will send you a text to initiate the next step, which will be a phone call. And that phone call could be pretty short or up to 10 minutes, depending on how many questions you have. But basically, we're trying to get an idea of what your situation is, what your needs are. And in that phone call, we'll also discuss which seed mix best fits your situation. So, for example, if I'm talking to somebody and I ask them what's their greatest issue on the farm that they're looking to solve with cover crops. They can say compaction, and if they're mentioning compaction, I would suggest the pollinator brassica mix just because of those really large roots. Or if they mention that nitrogen is getting more expensive year over year and they really want to add to that in some way, I would suggest the nitro builder mix. We have other mixes that I haven't gone into detail with, but some farmers need people to be able to walk through any time of the year. They need access anytime and they can't have a large cover crop blocking that. Then I would just suggest something like our annual clover blend, which is a lot shorter. It's also pretty dainty. Something that people really like about that mix is you can let it complete its life cycle, go to seed and die. It'll look ugly for a while. You'll just have a bunch of piles of dead plants. But if you think about clovers, they're so fine that once you hit that with a mower, they basically get obliterated and they're not going to end up as trash in your harvest later on. But you're able to start building a clover population in your soil. I have there's one Seeds for Bees person who's been part of the program for a number of years, and she actually doesn't have to plant clovers anymore because they come up naturally.
That's the questions we've had so far. Hopefully people are like ruminating here a little bit.
I think there was another question that popped up in the chat asking if we support planting and maintenance for the seed.
Oh, there it is.
So we do have a list of seed suppliers, it's not seed suppliers, of seed planters. But we don't fund seed planting, we don't fund broadcasting or termination. So we can get you a list of people that might be in your area. We've been having some difficulty with that one because people go into business and they go out of business. It's something that I would like to have more of an option of in the future, but that's a big, that would be a big ask on the program. We'll definitely provide advice and contacts. So I can get you phone numbers for seed planters. If you want to know which seed system works best for you, then I can definitely discuss that. I think we do try to keep an eye out for good prices on seed planters, so I could try to get you that. And then if you have any other questions, if you call me and you're like, my cover crop's getting way too tall, what can I do? Or I'm not sure when to plant, you can get a hold of me. So we're definitely here as an advisor and a source of information.
And then James is asking, can we use different mixes in 1 year, like a center strip of nutrient builder and a pollinator on each side or every other row or something along that line? And again, that comes back, I believe, to the application process and what you're kind of after on that type of thing. And then we'd also go into planting plans and things like planting patterns and things like that as well.
Yeah, so if you have enough acreage so that we can get you, so all of our seed comes in 50-pound bags. So if you have enough acreage for me to divide that between the two mixes and still have it in 50-pound bags, you can do that. I've been really interested. I've been hearing people about doing the center strip and then the something all different on the two sides. For those who don't know, that would be something that you can do with a seed drill that has individually dedicated seed boxes for each planter. So when you're going down the row, you can plant one mix in the middle and a different mix on either side. We can also split up your award so that, say you want to plant every other row with Nitro Builder and the next row with Pollinator Brassica, we can also do that as well. But we don't recommend mixing our seed mixes together. So I wouldn't recommend getting Pollinator Brassica and Nitro Builder and mixing those together in the tank, well, in your bin, because a lot of these plants can get pretty big and shade out the vetch and vice versa. So keeping those separate makes it so they play nice with each other. Let's see. It looks like we're running out of questions. Tom, what questions have you been hearing most from farmers out in the field?
Right now, what this time of year is termination. which is, we didn't touch on that, but it is a portion of the cover crop cycle. And it's choosing when to do it and then how to do it and so on and so forth. And usually it's the biggest question is, when do I do it? And seeing how we're putting these mixes out here in support of honeybees, and the two major ones that you discussed have a little bit different bloom time, peak bloom time. The pollinator brassica mix, established early enough, will bloom basically about the same time, or if not a little bit earlier than the almonds will start, which is what we're really shooting for. The nitro builder usually will have peak bloom about the time or after your almonds are done blooming, but they are still supporting honeybees and whatever. And so it keep that in mind as well. I mean, there's something in the nitro builder that will bloom early enough to be there at the same time as almonds, but the common vetch usually is going to be blooming a little bit afterwards. So if you're a have your own bees, or your bees are going to be hanging around for a little while, that is one that would be valuable in that response.
Yeah, and then something else to
Yeah.
something else to point out about the vetch is to get the most nitrogen out of it, you're going to want to terminate that at about 20% bloom. So you will be wanting to wait a little bit longer to terminate the nitro builder mix than the pollinator brassica mix.
Yeah, the pollinator brassica mix, you could, because it's so big and tall, you literally the day after your bees were taken out of the orchard, you could terminate that if you felt that was what you needed to do. Biggest trick with that one is once it starts to get past bloom, it starts getting woody, it gets more difficult to get rid of the residue.
Yeah. I see there's two more questions. One from Sarah, who's asking, is there a limit to how many applications you can submit for a company? So she works for a management company. So when it comes to farm managers that are managing a group of different farms, all you have to do is submit one application and then email me a spreadsheet, usually an Excel spreadsheet of the different farms, their acreage, their crop type. So we award based on land ownership. So if someone is managing 10 different farms for 10 different people, it would be one application, but it'd be 10 separate awards. And then Stella is asking if we are enrolled in Blue Diamond's Climate Smart grant for the conservation cover, can we still enroll for Seeds for Bees? So yes, you can be enrolled in Seeds for Bees if you're also enrolled in the Climate Smart grant. For some background, the Climate Smart grant is the grant that we have in conjunction with the Blue Diamond growers, which does offer some different cover crop mixes. So you can apply for Seeds for Bees. You'll get Seeds for Bees cover crop mixes. And you can do that on both Blue Diamond farmland and also on non-Blue Diamond farmland. In the past, we've suggested putting your Blue Diamond farm acres into the Climate Smart grant and your non-Blue Diamond acres into Seeds for Bees. But with that grant being paused, you can also look at having everything in Seeds for Bees as well. But we don't have the conservation cover in the Seeds for Bees program. And for some background, conservation cover differs from cover crops in that it's meant to be planted and last year over year over year. So this is something that won't be in your farm. It's going to be on some acreage that you aren't farming for a while, don't plan on farming. And that's what conservation cover is for. So it's kind of like a hedgerow, but it's short perennials, not shrubs.
And then Violet's asking if we're not yet farming honey and are instead focused planting plants for low, what are the good seeds for planting?
Yeah, so all of our cover crops are also beneficial for native and wild pollinators. They won't cover sections for specific pollinators. So if you're really wanting to do everything you can for native pollinators, I would suggest native wildflower seeds. And you could always email me and ask about different organizations that have that. There's things like the Monarch Joint Venture, which has some great opportunities. But you can also get Seeds for Bees bee yard mixes, and they're really good for native pollinators as well. I actually have some planted out by my office window, so I get to watch what shows up. And we'll have mason bees. I've seen bumblebees, different kinds of butterflies. They'll show up as well. Basically, if you plant it, they will come. Everybody's hungry. Forage has been declining in the United States year over year. So forage is the best thing you can do for both for honeybees and for native pollinators.
Yeah, and the other one is wherever you're located at, some things are better at that. There's
Mm-hmm.
for perennial type of
Oh,
thing
Tom, I
from,
think we're starting to lose you.
uh-oh. Anyways, okay. Yeah, a lot of times getting to your local NRCS can help you find pollinator plants that are in your location per se. We're going to be pretty much experts in California, not so much outside of California on that. And even some parts of California, I got to guess. And
Yeah.
then Tony's asking, do we have a perennial seed mix?
So we don't have a perennial seed mix, so a lot of our focus is on the farm. And when it comes to the farm situation, farmers need to make money off of their land. So they're designed to be terminated. There are some perennial plants in our bee yard mixes, well, perennial and biennial. Um, so like with our purple sun mix, that one has a lot of sunflowers, but it also has yellow and white blossoms sweet clovers. Those are biennial. And then the blue flax in that mix can also be a perennial depending on your location. But if you're really wanting a perennial mix and that's your goal, we can also help link you to other organizations such as what I mentioned earlier with Monarch Joint Venture. They have perennial and annual blends with an emphasis on milkweed because monarchs are their focus. If we don't have any more questions, I think we'll wrap up this webinar. Uh, I'll give you a few seconds to put in your question if there are any. But if not, I want to thank everybody for participating and for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.